So hello everyone, this is the Keen on Yoga podcast, if you didn't know already. And it's me, Adam Keen, your host. And it's just me this week, sorry. Next week I'll have no guest, but that's enough of that. I don't need to apologise for myself anymore. Today I'm going to talk to you about adjustments or assistance, physical assistance or physical adjustments. Now, it's important to know that really there's no other style of yoga that prioritises the physical assistance like Ashtanga. If you didn't know already, right, Ashtanga is really quite unique in this idea that you can be adjusted further than your body can do into a posture in a deeper sense, right? I think Iyengar was quite strict, but Iyengar didn't really do adjustments. He rather gave kind of alignment cues, as I believe. And then thinking about other types of yoga, well, no, obviously Desikachar was much gentler, I think, Yin yoga, I think they just let you lie over blankets and bolsters, and they don't really push you into anything. Your body weight does that. So really, it's the Ashtanga thing. And well, actually, it's Pattabhi Jois, to be honest. Pattabhi Jois was the greatest innovator because remember, Krishnamacharya might have come up with dynamic yoga, right? He kind of was the first person to put a public system of moving asanas together, right? It looks like there was record before, as we said in the Mysore Library. There was a record of a asana system that looked like it was a number of occasions, a number of texts. Yeah, it looked like it was moving, but no one had done it publicly. And Krishnamacharya seemed to have innovated a moving dynamic system, but it was for young boys, right? 12 to 18-year-old boys. Right? So yes, he was adjusting just as you would adjust the boy's body into shapes like they're malleable, right? If you hadn't noticed when you were young, right, you were quite malleable, right? And now maybe probably you're a little bit older, maybe double your age, maybe triple your age. You're not so malleable anymore. Now we lose elastin and collagen at an alarming rate, and I think in the modern kind of context, we don't really want to acknowledge our age, right? So people say to me all the time, "Well, why can't I do this?" Right? I say, "Well, I don't want to say like you're old, but and I can say it now because I'm kind of feeling old, and well, I am 45, so I'm not young, but it's age, right? It's age. I can't do a tenth of what I could 20 when I was 20, 25 years ago, right? The elastin, collagen, and the muscles, right? So Krishnamacharya, yes, he was pushing the boys, yes, he was adjusting the boys, but Bhattacharya was a real innovator. Not only did he make a set sequence for everyone to follow, Krishnamacharya gave templates or different ideas, right? But the boys were basically quite free to innovate their own sequences with his help. But the other thing was that, Krishnamacharya, when he stopped teaching young boys, when he didn't teach young boys anymore, he wasn't adjusting people like that, right? Because he was dealing with adults. And when he was dealing with adults, as in the Gary Crafto podcast, which you can look at here, listen to a few podcasts ago, 2 podcasts ago to be exact, Gary Crafto said when Krishnamacharya was teaching adults, he was teaching what he called, I guess in Sanskrit, yoga for joint stability. Yep, he wasn't teaching, I think, the yoga that and then another Sanskrit name for this, the yoga for young people to get physical health and, exercise and all that, So he wasn't pushing people, because if you push people, basically the weakest area goes first, right? If you push into anything, right? Think about this. If you push into anything, the weakest part of that system, of that structure, will bend first. Right? Yeah, whatever that is, right? And that's the weakest part, right? The flexible part, yes, but the weakest part as well. So what you want to do in broad strokes in yoga basically is avoid bending in the flexible parts, not go into your flexibility, and certainly not be pushed into your flexibility, because if you're pushed into a posture, the weakest part of your body will bend to make that shape. Yep, that's all there is to it. Yep, and that'll be a joint. That'll be something holding the joint in place, right? So, as Paul Grilly and Bernie Clark of Yin Yoga says, what's stopping me? Right? You have to analyze what's stopping me in this posture. Is it the tenseness of the muscles, or is it the compression of the joint, the bone on bone, or something like that? And either way, if there's a sense of a hard stop, doesn't really make any sense to push past it, because then you're not doing anything structurally with integrity, right? Which what I mean is that the muscles aren't holding the shape anymore. You're not holding it from the musculature, right? You're then pushing into a joint, or pushing your body basically further than it can go. And it implicates the ligaments and the tendons, right? The ligaments connect the joint together. The tendons connect the muscles that connect to the bones around that joint, right? The tendon connects to a muscle that connects to a bone, right? A ligament connects the joint together. And both of those things are weaker than the musculature. The muscles are tighter. They're less. Muscles don't really stretch in the first place. They move against each other. Right? So unless the muscles are moving against each other, naturally, to push into a joint, to push someone into a posture, there's just going to push their ligaments. It's going to make them overstretch their ligaments and joints, and the joint will become unstable in terms of that ligament will be overstretched, and in the end, sadly to say, it will tear. Yeah. And this, I don't speak about adjustments and for no reason, right? I speak about adjustments constantly because so many people get injured in them, right? And our first commitment in anything, right, in any healing modality, is like the Hippocratic oath that the doctors say: do no harm. Surely, and the first thing that many teachers do, sadly, of Ashtanga, particularly because of these adjustments, is to do harm where they don't need to. And there's many students that I've known that have gone back to Shalas after COVID and they've gotten injured again. They've gotten injured almost straight away and they've come back online to me because, well, online I can't certainly injure them. In person, I don't adjust anyway like that anyway. Or what I've often heard as well is they're doing the posture. They're doing the posture anyway, right? They've made the shape and then they're pushed further in inverted commas in Ashtanga, deeper into that posture. For what reason, I don't know. Deeper meaning what, right? Meaning quantity, right? It doesn't even make sense in terms of the yoga modality, in terms of the yoga kind of philosophy. It doesn't even make sense in the first place, where yoga's looking for balance, equanimity, to be pushed in one direction only. And the philosophical sense doesn't make sense, right? It's not what yoga's aiming for, which is a certain equanimity of body, and that translates to an equanimity of mind, right? If you can balance forces in the body, a push and a pull back, an isometric stretch, right, a stretch in tension between two parts, yep, then you can somewhat translate that to a mental sense of equanimity as well. I think the two go together. And secondly, to stimulate someone's body more, right, to stretch, to obviously stretch, which is to stretch in one direction only, right? Yeah, as a passive stretch, right? Yeah, like a feeling of, let's say, going into a forward fold and pulling yourself down towards your legs if you're a bit stiff, or being pushed down so your chest is on your knees, your chin is on your shins. Yeah, that's a passive stretch, right? When you're just pulling forward, yeah? And you're going to feel a stimulation in that stretch. You're going to feel strong stimulation. It's going to tell you, well, it's going to a number of things, right? Firstly, it's exciting, right? It's exhilarating, right? But secondly, what it's trying to say is, back off, right? The body always wants homeostasis, and the body's stimulation of the body is suggesting to you, you're kind of in a dangerous zone here. You're in a dangerous zone. You might consider pulling back here, because that stimulation is conveying to you the message of pulling back, not pushing forward. That's the thing. But we take it the opposite way. We're stimulated, it's exciting, and we get literally get addicted to that stimulation of the stretch, because it's kind of, as I said, exhilarating, meaning that a sense of transcending one's limited sense of self, right? And that's understandable. It's all natural. I'm not speaking, from some higher place here, right? I understand all those things and I've done them all myself. The sense of exhilaration of transgressing your boundaries to something that's not so limited, right? That sense of transcending ourselves. We need that sense as well. We want to be ourselves, but we're a little bit ambiguous. We always want to also, as well as being ourselves and let's say delineating, transcribing our boundaries, we also want to transcend our boundaries to a sense of oneness, to a sense of connection, where we don't have the burden of self. So pushing beyond our natural limitations, it's exciting, it's addictive, it's exhilarating. Yeah, it's understandable. Yeah, but it doesn't work if you want a safe and steady and strong, stable body, yeah, in the long term. And of course, we want to practice for the long term. We just don't want to practice, 5-10 years. Our yoga career ended in 5-10 years. In which case, then we have to preserve our body for the long term. And that means isometric stretching. When there's a push, there's a pullback. So you're doing a concentric stretch or an active stretch. Yeah. And that's involving muscles. When you're stretching one way only, that's just involving joints. That's a passive stretch. Yeah. To stretch the ligaments and tendons, like I said. When you're stretching and pulling back, when you're pushing through the feet in a forward fold, for example, then you're pulling back through the back. Yeah. That's an isometric active stretch, concentric stretch. And that is activating your muscle groups, right? When it says active, that means active muscularly. And in very basic lines, where there's a muscle doing one thing, there's another muscle doing the other thing. Yep. So if you engage the thigh, you relax the hamstrings. Yep. And if you engage the hamstring, you might relax the quads or the front of the leg. Yep. So it helps you go forward you'll relax your antagonist, which is the muscle that's opposing the quad, if you push and engage your quads, right? Then the other muscle will relax to let you go through. So, and I'm no anatomist, right? And I know fairly little about anatomy, really, right? Just through my own body, really. And the bottom line here is, and you don't need to be an anatomist, right? It's simple. All you need to know is that your muscles work. One does one thing, the other does the other thing. So like a bicep needs a tricep. One's an agonist. The bicep is an agonist here if I'm flexing my arm back towards my shoulder. And the tricep is the antagonist, right? And when I release my arm and put it back to straight, yeah, the tricep is the antagonist. It's slowing down the movement, and the tricep is the agonist, and the bicep is the antagonist because you need to slow down the movement. Yeah, yep. So one is contracting and one is engaging. When the other's engaging, the other's relaxing. Yeah. So that just really blows the whole adjustment thing out of the water in the first place, right? Just that idea of muscles needing to work against each other. And again, we found in the recent years that muscles don't stretch. When I first started yoga, they said, well, long muscles, long stretching, stretch muscles and make them long. Yeah. That a yogi has long muscles, they used to say, right? No, it's just the tone of muscles through the head. It's just the tone, the head decides the tone of muscles, right? It's all mental in the end, right? Some muscles might be naturally longer or shorter in people, right? That's just they're born with shorter or longer muscles, right? So, for example, someone who's a sprinter, they'll have they have a shorter calf muscle, for example, because they can really engage that powerful calf muscle. A longer calf muscle might make a long distance walker or a long distance runner better. Yep. And these people naturally gravitate because of those certain musculature, the muscles being longer and shorter towards certain things, right? But we don't lengthen or shorten our muscles ourselves, right? We adjust the tone of our muscles through repetition. The head gradually sends different signals to the muscles, and they can seem like they're longer, but they're not actually longer. They're just responding differently. Secondly, I can't remember what I was going to say now. Oh, yeah. The muscles, what you're trying to do is the muscles to work against each other. They're not actually lengthening. You're just, if you imagine that they're kind of often stuck and they don't work so good, right? The muscle fascia that protects the muscle like a cling film wrap around muscles, right? Muscle fascia. Yeah. It sticks them all together. Well, the muscle fascia itself gets stuck, right? It gets tight, right? It lays down little striations. The calcium deposits start to lay down little striations. You can see this if you cut into a cadaver. All these small grainy looking calcium deposits, and basically this means that the muscles don't move against each other. If they're not articulating against each other, the muscles are stuck together. Yep. So then you've got nothing to stretch, and when you're pushed into a posture, to come back to the idea originally, when you're pushed into a posture, say let's look at some kind of back bend, right? So if you were pushed and someone was trying to deepen your back bend, like in Kapotasana, for example, if someone was to take your arms and pull you in, and catching your ankles in a back bend, if someone was to take your hands and pull you in. Well, if your back doesn't move because the muscles of your upper back are stuck together, and muscles are tighter anyway than joints, right? Then all that you've got is to use your joint and the ligaments and the tendons around that joint that are not as strong as muscles because they're smaller, basically. So you'll do it from there because the weakest point will always take the strain. So I'll say it again. I've said it once and I'll say it twice. Physical adjustments don't work, but physical assistance is essential. I mean, the two things that define Ashtanga for me, right, is the emphasis on self-practice, right? So good. And I think other yoga systems are really missing a trick when they're not emphasizing self-practice. The self-practice thing is the thing, right? Without self-practice, I'm not sure you can really do yoga. You can't really practice yoga asana without self-practice. Yeah. So the Ashtanga thing, it has that going for it. That's why I love it. Yeah. And the repetition is really helpful in that capacity. Yeah. Especially for the teacher also to understand where everyone's at in a room. You can't really understand where everyone's at in a room if everyone's doing completely their own self-practice. Yeah? So it's a teaching modality in a way. Yeah. Anyway, so it's got that going for it, right? And when you're doing self-practice, the second thing it has going for it is that the teacher can come around and give you physical assistance, right? Because they're not leading a class from the front. So the second thing that Ashtanga has going for it is a physical assistance, right? And this is absolutely essential for developing a yoga practice, right? So this is where we're at with the adjustments, right? The confusion being that assistance isn't the same as adjustments, right? I give physical assistance, but I don't give physical adjustments. That's the big difference, right? What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Firstly, it means that, as I spoke to if you haven't listened to that Bessel van der Kolk podcast, it's a fantastic one. And Bessel van der Kolk wrote that book, if you don't remember, The Body Keeps the Score. It's worth reading, The Body Keeps the Score. Fantastic book. Really one of the only books still about trauma in the body. Another person who talks about trauma in the body, Peter A. Levine. He's really good for, I think it's something like Taming the Tiger is his book. Yeah. Anyway, Bessel van der Kolk's book is great. Hard read, a painful read at points because he's talking about specific cases of trauma through abuse, etc. And I remember mentioning to him up to this day, I said, well, maybe we shouldn't touch people then, because if they're in trauma, maybe we shouldn't touch people at all because we don't know how they're going to respond, having been touched inappropriately or in traumatic, abusive ways before. And he said, look, if you don't touch people, he said it's like a death sentence for them. They'll never get over that trauma if they don't have positive touch. Yep. So first of all, I was put in my place. And second of all, it made me think, positive touch is essential. Yep. And that's certainly not the touch of adjustments in the first place, because that touch of adjustments, you see, is, to be adjusted into a posture that's other than you, to be pushed and kind of aggressively into a shape that your body doesn't actually make, is not sending in the positive emotion of endorsing the body, is it? It's saying the opposite, really. It's an abuse again. It's an abuse of your autonomy. It's saying you're not good enough. Your shape isn't good enough. I'm going to aggressively put you into a shape that's more appropriate for you in my eyes. Yep. So that in itself really just, again, kind of problematizes the adjustment. But physical assistance is very different. Physical assistance could be, and this is the main difference. When you say, well, what is physical assistance then if it's not adjusting? Well, physical assistance, if it's not adjusting, is three things, right? And the first thing and the main thing is endorsement, right? My main modality of touch, my main reason for touch, the main reason or aim in my touch is to endorse the person in the shape their body's making. Now, it sounds too obvious, right? I'm not doing anything then. Essentially, I'm just putting my hands on in a not creepy way, just resting my hands firmly, and just being with them in that shape, And I remember John Scott doing that to me years ago. And someone who didn't feel good about their body, who didn't have a positive self-image, maybe wasn't always confident about touch and being touched, just that endorsement, that was the best assistance I ever had. Just that endorsement of the state my body was naturally making, rather than basically say, well, your body's wrong, and I'm going to adjust it now into a better way, right? That simple, say, you're okay. This shape, albeit maybe we both know that it's not perfectly balanced, it's not a perfect demonstration of the idealized posture, but it's perfect. It's perfect for you at this moment right now. Yep. You're fine. You're okay. And that to me, kind of up to this day, it really kind of chokes me up to talk in this way, because it's so powerful, right? The endorsement, it's quite the opposite of adjustments, right? That physical touch as endorsement, right? Again, physical assistance essential, physical adjustments not essential. And before I go to the second reason, I wanted to backtrack. Remember, I mentioned earlier about the idea. Well, why do we adjust in the first place, right? To deepen a posture? Right? Is that what we're doing, to try to deepen someone in a posture? What does that mean? What does that even mean? Right? Again, it's the deepening, as in the eyes of another, in a demonstrative way, in a visual way, in quantity, right? That's all we can do. We can never, we're not deepening the inner experience, of course, by pushing them further into a posture. We're deepening the quantitative amount they stretch in an ideal sense of a generalized posture. Yep. It's a violence against the individual. Yeah? I'm sorry to say, and you can decide what you want, right? Like, I'm not saying you have to think my way, obviously. I'm just suggesting that there's another possibility, that I give a physical assistance. I do MySoul classes, that I'm there all the time. And I honestly, to be honest, I don't touch people that much. I try and talk to them as much as I might touch them. I mean, not loads of chat, right? But one or two words goes a long way. Yeah. But, another thing is, I don't really think we should get all tangled in someone else's energy field. Now, I'm not all really inclined to be all woo about energy, or it's energy, but we are something other than physical, right? There is an energy behind us, right? And when someone else comes close to you, there's an energy you feel together, right? That if someone's constantly pushing you hard, right, in an intense manner, your own sense of self and energy is externalized again. You're going into the outside, right? You're waiting for them. You've already been drawn outside your body, right? So you don't really want to give that kind of intensity of feeling in the first place, because at the second it obscures, in that intensity of physical sensation in the muscles, it obscures the deeper subtlety of feeling something deeper than that in the body. Yep. So, second reason, alignment. What does that mean? It means finding a balance in imbalance, right? I'm not trying to put anyone's body into an externalized, visually ideal shape. Just seeing the natural way their body might move. And I should have said earlier, I only do this with two fingers or one finger and thumb. Yeah, I never touch more than that. I never exert more pressure than that, right? Yep. And doing so, you just got a little touch here, a little touch there. This is connected to this. It's when I say alignment and balance and imbalance, what I mean is connections, really. Like connecting the body together. There's another way to say bandha, right? Just see if you can find a connection from the big toe up to the back of the throat, up to the soft palate. Two lines of energy up either side of the body. Yep. Okay. So that's that sense of just connecting the body together. Right? That's why I touch. Yep. Just so the person feels steady, comfortable, balanced, right? Albeit, I'm not trying to put them into a perfect sense of alignment. So alignment is a misused term often, and again, it's because we've just taken one usage of a word. I think we often do that, right? Like I mentioned the other day with anger, right? The anger now just means one thing. It's very unnuanced. We tend to do that with the words. Just shut them down into one narrow definition. We don't allow any expansion around them. Yeah? So our linguistic form of meaning becomes the only thing that is meant when we say a word, right? And this is a problem, right? Anyway, that's a slightly wider subject. Anyway, let's go back to the other reason why I touch, right? What did I say? I said that there's alignment, and then there's endorsement, yep. And then the last thing probably is breathing, right? Breathing. The breath is the thing. The diaphragm, the dia to fram fence, yeah, connects the upper body, thoracic cavity, the two holes in the body, the two spaces in the body. Basically, we're made of space. We're made of akash. Yeah? The upper body and the lower body. The diaphragm connects the two. It's the muscle of the soul. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. The diaphragm is the thing. And Krishnamacharya was thinking the same when he taught the vinyasa counting. Yeah, and with inhale and exhale. In exhale, you're making a contracted shape. Inhale, you're making an expansive shape, because the diaphragm does that. As you inhale, the diaphragm pulls down and in, and it expands the body. As you exhale, the diaphragm springs up and in, and it contracts the body. Yeah? So the diaphragm is making the movement in the body. Yeah? And the diaphragm, and also the diaphragmatic breathing, is stimulating the nervous system. So if you're breathing in the thoracic cavity, up the upper body, you're going into the sympathetic nervous system. If you're breathing in belly breathing, abdominal breathing, as they say, then you're going into parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah. So really, when we're doing yoga, we're really playing with the diaphragm. It's the effect of the diaphragm that really does the job, let's say. Yeah. I have a further metaphor, right? And maybe it's a little bit of a segue, but let me just say it briefly. That basically, the spine has the nerves around the spine. When you're moving the spine, you're cleansing the emotions and everything that's trapped and the tension that runs around these nerves of the spine. As you move the spine in different directions and exert internal pressure on the spine, it throws up these emotions back in the body, and the diaphragm, moving in and out in rhythm, it has to move efficiently like a fan, and it purges these emotions like it resolves them. Let's say it shreds them and lets them go. Yep. But if the diaphragm isn't engaged in this rhythmical breathing, then the trauma, I think, it stays in the body. Yep. Just think about taking a big deep breath. And you're doing it from the diaphragm. You don't have to do it from the diaphragm. That's the thing. Yeah? When we normally breathe, we breathe a little bit from the pec muscles, from the intercostal muscles, from the sternocleidomastoid, the neck muscles, from the scalene muscles, the upper clavicle. Yep. But in yoga, we're trying to accentuate the breathing, particularly from the diaphragm. It's a very special muscle. Yep. So when you're assisting someone, you're trying to make them do that diaphragmatic breathing, or just aware that they're trying to focus on that muscle doing the action. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's one of the main things, right? And that means in the posture, there's this gentle rhythm. There's this gentle undulation, a back and forth. When you're in the shape itself, there's a movement, you see. I mean that. I don't mean when you're coming into the posture and going out of the posture. I mean when you're in the shape, staying there. There's a diaphragmatic in breath and out breath, like two halves of a coin, two halves of a yin and yang, and they make the body move back and forth gently. Yeah, and that's the freeing movement. I think the freeing movement in the body, and the freeing movement in the deeper than that. Let's say deeper than that in the body energy. Let's say, yeah. So that's the third reason I touch, and give physical assistance, right? I touch the body. Yeah. The fourth reason, which I used to say, which I've cancelled now, is to give someone a taste of something that they can't do. Now and again, I'll do that. If it involves a strength thing, if it involves holding them in a strength thing, for example, Bakasana, they can't do a Bakasana, I could hold them there and give them the feeling of it and take the load off. Yep. So that's a safe adjustment where I'm bearing the weight of their body and they're taking less weight in the elbows, the wrists, and the shoulders, for example, right? See, I'm not adjusting them, I'm holding them in them. It takes a lot of effort. Yeah. But so I give someone a taste of something if I can take the weight off. Yep, and allow their muscles to feel the sense of engagement, but without the full weight of their body on them. Yep, so the muscles get an idea, trains the muscles, gives them a sense of what the muscles might be doing before putting bigger weights on. Yeah, and then they can't do it because the weight is too heavy. Yeah. But what I wouldn't do is give someone a taste of something where it's involving a passive stretch. They can't do Kapotasana, and I'm going to make them do it. Yeah. That I wouldn't, yeah. Or when it's, pushing someone into a flexibility stretch, basically. Yeah. So I'll hold someone when it's a strength stretch, yeah, but I wouldn't give someone a taste of something when they can't do the posture and say, will you adjust me into it? Marichasana D being another one. Will you adjust me into it? Well, I'll help them with the arm, but if it involves yanking or pulling or exerting any force, then no, I'm not going to adjust you into it. No. But, yeah. So now and again, I suppose you could say, well, yes, you can adjust someone, but only if it's taking their weight. And you wouldn't want to do it all the time, right? So that's just totally tiring. And that's why so many Mysore teachers get burnt out, because they're giving these adjustments. I could teach for 12 hours a day because I don't exert hardly any physical force I don't exert any energy in the Mysore room. Okay, only walking a lot back and forth and mental thought because I'm thinking a lot and I'm thinking of how to explain things to people, right? But no physical. It's not physical dog work, yeah. But if you're adjusting all the time, it's so strenuous, and so many teachers complain of being hurt or injured or tired out or burnt out because they're simply doing this, and they don't need to be, right? You don't need to be exerting so much force because it does injure teachers, yeah. So it's no good for anyone, really. What else could be said about this, right? I don't know, mate. Maybe I've kind of covered most of it, and you get the gist of it, right? I still think physical touch is essential, but as an endorsement, yeah, and not an adjusting the body into something they can't do. Because look, let's put it this way: as an end note, let's put it this way: even if you could put someone in a posture, right, and they can do it, should you, right? Do you know further on down the line how their body's going to respond? Can you see what they're doing, exactly what muscles are working and what muscles are not? None of us can really know. Yeah. We can all do postures from different muscle groups, right? Just because you're doing a posture doesn't mean you're exerting and engaging the same musculature to do the posture someone else. Yeah. And no one can, it's very hard. I'm not saying no one can, but it's very hard to see that. Yeah. It's when you're pushing someone to a posture, yeah, adjusting someone. Even if you can do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you don't know how the body's going to respond further on down the road, one, and you don't really know what's going on inside that person. And finally, often you don't really know because what they're feeling because they don't give you honest feedback. Yep. And that's, I think, maybe to finish on, you could say to someone, oh, can I adjust you? Like, this is the way that people get around it these days. Can I adjust you? Well, it's a loaded question, isn't it? The teacher's standing over you. You want to do good. You want to be part of the group. They're the teacher, and they're saying to you, can I adjust? You don't want to say no, right? We're not equal here. I mean, of course we are equal, but in this role play, the teacher has the authority. So it's not really it's not really a level question to ask, right? There's a weight here, and the weight is towards the teacher. To say no is a courageous move, and not always easy. Yeah. So that doesn't really get it out of the way if you ask a student, oh, do you mind if I adjust you? Yeah. Yeah. See what I mean? Right? And secondly, when you're adjusting them, you could say, well, how does that feel? But oftentimes they won't tell you if it hurts because we don't. I mean, I've done it myself. You don't want to. You don't want to upset the teacher. You don't want to seem like, you know, like a crybaby or something. I don't know. Well, you don't want to seem hurt. I mean, I used to do this a bit in my school. You don't want to seem like it's hurting because you want to move on and you feel like we had this a bit in my school. If you look like you're injured, then you can't move on to the sequences, which is obviously wrong-headed, but that's often how it goes, right? So you don't get normal, natural feedback, right? And even when the teacher, and many teachers I know, sadly, have injured people, not just once, but many times, they're not told because students don't like to tell. They don't feel like they want to speak up, and that's understandable, right? I would be the same, I think, yeah? So their teacher never really knows because no one really tells them, yeah? And every place I go, look, every single workshop I do, right? This is why I could speak on this subject with hardly any notes and just off the top of my head, so passionately. I feel I'm so committed to this subject because every place I go, people tell me that been so and so teacher came and I was injured in this workshop. Yeah, well, it's crazy first of all because it's a workshop, for God's sakes. You don't even know the body. To adjust a person you've only met for 1 or 2 days is even crazier than adjusting them strongly in a normal Mysore situation where you've known them for X number of months or years. Anyway, every single time, I say, I've got an injury. I say, how did you hurt yourself? Oh, I got adjusted again and again and again. Yeah. First, Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm, right? If all we had to do is hold the baby, as it were. Yeah. Try not to injure students more than we already come to life and practice half broken, right? We're there to heal. Yeah. Not to get further injured or injure anyone else. Yeah. Imagine how bad you'd feel. Yeah. As a teacher, like if you knew that you'd hurt someone and they're struggling with an injury, as I know many of the students that I know are for years, because it doesn't go away as you're an adult, right? It doesn't go away. Years and years that'll be with you, maybe forever. Yeah. And you did that to someone. Yeah. I'd hate for that to be me. Yeah. It may have been, because in my past I adjusted people as well. Yeah. But I hope not. Anyway, that's my old thing about adjustments again. I'm sorry to go on about it again. I'm sorry. But next week, you'll have a proper podcast with a proper guest. And I hope it's food for thought. And even if you like the adjustments and find them exhilarating, maybe it'll just make you stop and consider again and consider what the body's actually telling you there. And just think it's a risk. It's a risk because it's a calculated risk. And if you're going to take a risk, then you have to be willing to take the price, to pay the price, right? Any gamble, right? That a person who's responsible in the gamble has to be willing, if they're gambling, to take the consequences if the gamble doesn't work, right? So if you're willing to pay the price, take the gamble. But in my mind, it's better to go slow and steady and not risk the gamble because we want to do this for our whole lives and not just for Christmas, as it were, yeah? For all our lives, which means you just have to take the slow path, right? And just because just because you could do it, doesn't mean you should do it. Yeah. Or just because you can see as a teacher that someone could do that, doesn't mean you should get them into it today. Or you're worried, like this is another reason of adjusting in the modern paradigm, that competition, the teacher feels that they feel the pressure to keep the students by adjusting them. And maybe the students say, can you adjust me in this? And they feel if they do the adjustment, the student will be exhilarated and they'll stay. Just play the long game. Yep. In the long term, they'll stay with you if you don't injure them. Yep. If you do, they may stay with them. If you adjust them and they're happy, in the long term, it might hurt them. And then they'll only go around and say that you've injured them to other people. Anyway, So try not to resist that pressure. I know we want to keep students, but there's better ways to do it. Yep. Anyway, back next week with another guest. If you like the podcast, then please review us and do all that stuff on iTunes and Spotify. Leave a comment, hopefully a good one. And at least if it's not a good one, then not too harsh. Balance it. And I'll see you next week. If I don't see you before, well, I won't see you before, probably, but maybe come onto a retreat this year. We've got a few retreats going on. We've got one in Goa in November, one before that in Alicante, walking backwards in August, and in September in Puglia in Italy, and then at Christmas and over the New Year's with Ellen Johansson, who's going to do the meditation in Malaga. So maybe I'll see you in one of those. All right. Bye for now. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.